really just like to take this opportunity to say a huge thank you and heartfelt thank you to the many people who've been involved in getting us to where we are today. So really do appreciate that. Firstly, to the members of the Partnership Forum. The Partnership Forum worked very collaboratively with the PHIN team and extensive workload. And I think when we think about the weekly meetings that have taken place and also the right balance of challenge and support, so very much grateful for that input. But also all our other members, PPUs, other providers, stakeholders, everybody who's been engaged in the consultation and feedback process. I think the level of engagement is really appreciated, and it certainly has taken us a long way forward. So thank you for that as well. Also, thank you to the CMA team. We'll hear from Susanna from the CMA later on. The CMA have worked very collaboratively with us, and that's really appreciated. They provide an exceptional level of support, and they've also adopted a very pragmatic approach about how we take things forward. So again, I think we're very grateful for that. And finally, just like to say a huge thank you to the PHIN executive team and the wider PHIN staff who are with us today. Everybody has gone well above and beyond to help us get to where we are today. So a big thank you to Jack and everybody else. Having said all of that, I think we also recognise that today is just the start of the process. The ongoing commitment and hard work that's going to be required will fall on PHIN, the hospital providers, and all of our stakeholders. And so, to implement the plan within the timescales that are required by the CMA, we know that the hard work basically starts now. I think throughout the planning and consultation phase, we've heard one clear message, and that's been to deliver the order. However, I think what we also heard is that patients and future patients must be central to all our work. And while there are still many challenges ahead of us in terms of how we work through some of the detail on delivery and implementation, the focus must always be on patients, and that must underpin everything that we do. So more of this will follow later on in the afternoon, but I would just like to encourage everybody to get involved in the various work streams that will follow on from today, the various issues that are set out in the plan. And if people can let us know the areas you're particularly interested in, I think that would be incredibly helpful, because clearly the more we can get input from a wide range of stakeholders to ensure that all different perspectives are heard, then clearly the better the final product is going to be. So I guess my plea is just please do get involved. I think also there's been a number of changes at PHIN in recent times, and I'm also pleased to confirm that Ian Gargan has been appointed as our Chief Executive. Ian officially starts at the beginning of September, and I know he's very much looking forward to working and collaborating with all members and stakeholders. And I know Ian brings a great deal of relevant experience and insight, and will add greatly to the strength of the team. So Ian, I don't know if you just want to stand up and wave so everybody can see who you are.
I see you all. Look forward to working with you. Let's start.
Thank you, Ian. So anyway, at this point, I think I'll hand over to Jack Griffin, who's our acting CEO and Finance and Commercial Director. And as you can see, I think we've got the programme someplace. Yes, we've got the programme there. The main focus of the programme is going to be on a panel question and answer session. So very much an interactive session today, but we will start with a few introductory presentations, and then obviously we'll finish with the formal part of the meeting, which will be with the vote. So Jack, over to you.
Great, thank you, Jane. And thanks for everyone for attending today. It's great to see such good attendance. So I'm not going to spend too long on this today, but really just give an overview to everyone of progress to date and where we are, a bit of a stock take. Some of the key themes coming out of the consultation, so thank you for everyone who was a part of that process. And lastly, some of the ongoing work and next steps that we're going to have to tackle next. I'll also be sort of handing over at points to John Fistein, our Chief Medical Officer, and also Jonathan Finney, Member Services Director too. So where are we? We have a plan which has come about largely through the work of the Partnership Forum, which has been meeting weekly since February. So thank you again to all those who have been part of that process too. We supplemented that with extensive consultation from one-to-one meetings and a series of strategic forums that we held across April and May, which I know many of you are able to attend. We then concluded that with a draft plan. That went out to consultation from the 1st to 15th of June. Not the biggest window, I recognise that, but I think given the timeframes we had, that was probably the best we could do. but we got really good responses from that. Off the back of that, this gave us time to iterate the final plan, which went out to the CMA and all our stakeholders and voting members on the 30th of June. So thank you for that. And the CMA went to their board yesterday, who are supportive of the plan, but we'll ask Susanna to speak a bit more to that sort of later in the session. So the plan, what does it say? So it's a 4-year delivery plan that gets us to the CMA deadline of June 2026, which covers all Article 21 measures and Article 22 fees at both hospital and consultant level, where that's possible to do so. That is then complemented by 16 strategic enablers, which are basically critical to making sure those measures and fees get published. So what does it look like? This is the plan on a page. I won't go into the detail. As you can expect, there's a lot more behind this, but high-level terms, we've done 15 iterations of the measures and fees to date, focusing on the simpler ones first. We've got 38 more to do over the next 4 years. So clearly more to do and an increased pace of delivery. The enablers, a bit less cluttered this page, but a mixture of longer-term improvement programs and discrete projects, all of which complement the programs on the previous slide. So to put that into context and how we're actually doing as a sector in terms of participation, so we have about 650 hospital sites registered with us. Of those, 550 are submitting basic data to us, but only 150 to 200 are submitting all the data sets consistently. So clearly more to be done. On the consultant side, positive trends, which is really encouraging, but I guess some still more work to do. So 12,000 consultants we're seeing appearing in the private data. 9,000 of those have provided us with their consultation fees, 8,000 with their procedure fees. We have 2,000 now showing patient feedback, which has increased from 700 when we started. However, there's still less than 3,000 consultants who have actually gone in and approved their activity data to show any volumes on the website profiles. So again, not only do we need to increase the output of what we're producing, we need to get the participation up too. And on to some good news, the website. So since we relaunched it last year, we've had about 250,000 users now, and also 1 million page views. So that has grown month on month, and also, I think, pretty organically as well. We don't market this. This is all from sort of pushing to our direction and lots of sort of Google search sort of redirection as well. So this is really encouraging. We've also launched a questionnaire on the website, which is providing some really rich information from patients about how they're using it, what they like, what they don't like. And this is also quite a key bit of the consultation process, which people seem to really engage with. So you will be seeing more and hearing more about this going forward. Okay, consultation. So despite that 2-week window, we still got 20 written responses and held about 21 one-to-one meetings during that time frame. And there are some key themes which probably need to touch on, but not dwell on too much. Clearly, there's area where we need to go, do some more work with you, provide some more reassurance, or just get into more detail. So it ranged from the measure development process through to compliance in general and enforcement. PPUs had some specific issues about representation. PHIN resourcing, clearly a big issue. Patient focus and use of the PHIN website also came up, plus ADAPT, as well as fees and packages. So we'll touch on these in a bit more detail over the next few minutes. So on to measure development and publication, I'll hand over to John.
Very good, thank you very much, Jack. And I'll talk a little bit, and not obviously in as much detail as the whole subject warrants through limitations of time just now. But before I even do that, just thank you again to the Partnership Forum for participating in these discussions. Thank you particularly both retrospectively and prospectively to those that have been participating in what we call task and finish groups to look at some of these issues in more detail. The headline to take away from all of this really is that we have to put information out in the public domain to help patients make choices, and those choices should be informed. And part of our responsibility is to make sure that information is fair and accurate to sites and to consultants. And we've been working through the measures one by one, really, to work out in detail what that means. And what this is saying is that we follow an approach where we, as Jack has mentioned already, try to do the simple, easy things first, and then we worry about the more difficult ones later. And of course, there's a development time for that. So as we say here, the prioritization really is twofold, actually. Firstly is what can we publish and what's most meaningful for us to publish. But secondly, importantly for those of us here, what data do we get? And you'll see in that enabling plan and through our strategy and plan, lots of talk about data quality, because clearly we're dependent on the quality of the data that comes in. So there's quite a bit of work around that. One of the recurring themes thinking about fairness is this large bullet point here about patient complexity and case mix. We need to be able to be sure we are comparing like with like before we're making any sort of qualitative assessment of one consultant or one site versus the other. And we're working with experts both within our team, if you like, but also externally, and consulting with our members to make sure that we get that process right, wherever possible, following what's done in the NHS. So there's some notion of comparability. I'm just going to say 2 sentences about presumed publication, and no more really. So the presumed publication, I'll take the blame for the title of it. It's a slightly cryptic title, but effectively what we want to get to, going on from that theme of improving data quality, is the position that we can trust the data that we get in from hospitals. So there's an automatic process that goes through to publication. At the moment, we have lots of checks and balances before we publish, which clearly hinders the pace of progress. So those slides that Jack showed about consultant uptake, some of these things have to do, we're limited through that because we want to make sure the data are right before we publish it. That presumed publication programme is looking in some detail about what's required in order to make that process as frictionless as possible. A slight little bit of repetition through these, but effectively, the principles that we've adopted and which are in the plan are, as I've said already, we will do the simple things first. And where things are more complicated, we might look to do something simpler as an interim. So one example of that might be, say, for example, an aspiration might be to have these things called patient-reported outcome measures, PROMs, at a consultant level, for example, comparing one consultant with the other. But in some areas, as we all know, the data quality and the coverage that we have isn't up to that. But at the moment, that doesn't mean that as an interim, we couldn't say, well, tell me about outcomes for knee replacements or cataracts across the entire country. And that would give patients valuable information about a procedure that they are considering. So that would be an interim step towards that, quote, full delivery. And there are other things that we can do as an interim. For example, presenting the information that we receive back to the hospitals and back to the consultants themselves, so they can use it themselves for quality improvement and benchmarking themselves. So these are the interim steps. So it's not all or nothing, but these things. So that's the thing about the phased approach. I've already mentioned simple then complex later. The thing I just wanted to mention explicitly again is this thing about consultant level publication. Statistically, it can be quite difficult to have enough numbers to be able to differentiate between even sites, sometimes hospitals, but let alone consultants, because if I do 2 or 3 operations in a year, they might go fantastically, they might go badly. Is that really a differentiator statistically? So we need to actually work out how far the data can take us in terms of publication, as in for the public and patients. But as I've said a second ago, we can of course feed that back to the consultants themselves, and that is a big step change that hasn't been seen before. So, as I say, not time to go into all the detail here, but I hope that gives you a flavour of some of the things that we are doing and approaching it. And I think it's that me. So on that point, I'll hand over back to Jackie in that direction to work out the flow.
So thanks, John. So one of the other themes that came out of it is around compliance and enforcement. So as you know, we have some task and finish groups at the moment, trying to work out what complete means for each of the Article 21 measures. So actually, so we know exactly when we've actually done it because we've completed the definition. So that'll be done this year. But also, I think we need to be realistic that, is it achievable that 100% of hospitals and consultants will be 100% compliant 100% of the time for all of the measures? I think we need to be a bit realistic about this as a sector, about where we draw the line on this, and then as a sector we can say we've achieved this. But at the same time, going back to some of the earlier slides about participation rates, it's probably not the time to draw that line at the moment. There's clearly more to be done on that front. So this is something we're going to have to keep an eye on over the next couple of years in particular, and work with the CMA until we can actually work out when we think the sector as a whole is complete or what a realistic target could be. Another question off the back of this was, well, actually, based on this compliance rate, what could trigger enforcement action by the CMA? And I think that's something that, as the providers and consultant reps in the room will have to work on in dialogue with the CMA over the coming weeks and months to actually sort of work out what that may look like too. So that's a bit of a couple of open questions on that front, but one that was a common issue from the consultation. Just over to Jonathan on PPUs.
Sure. So thanks, Jack. Thanks, everyone. So just a few comments that came up in the consultation, and these were around PPU participation and involvement in the consultation and the number of forums that we ran. That was feedback from probably the smaller PPUs, more that they hadn't been involved so much in the process and wanted to be. So we amended the plan to say that's something we heard you, and we want to involve the smaller patient services units as we go forward, and extend invitations to like the implementation forum, etc. So we'll be doing that. We are inviting representation onto what is or becomes the partnership forum going forward as we look to implementation and monitoring progress. And at some stage, and however we can make it work, voting membership for some kind of NHS representation. So yeah, and we've part of what's been an issue in terms of the small PPUs is who do we liaise? What's the collective that means we are engaging with PPUs? I mean, don't mean the Kings and the Imperials and others. It's more the smaller units. So that's been quite difficult because they're, again, very small and lots of them around the country. So, but we have been engaging and started conversations with NHS England to see what could that look like? How can we move forward? And I know that we're responding to a particular invitation for our Southwest network of NHS PPUs to sort of engage with them over the coming months. So yeah, that was an area that came up. Thanks, Jen.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. PHIN resourcing, obviously hot topic. We hear you, we understand the economic environment and the inflationary pressures that are out there at the moment. So, we don't take these increases lightly. Also, as a membership organisation, we need to be transparent about how we use our resources, be transparent to our members. So we heard the feedback. We got various questions about this, so we provided more detail through a pack to voting members, I think back end of last week now, which hopefully answered some of those questions. But we're happy to take more questions on that too. So what did that mean? So with a bit more time from the plan's publication and actually being able to look at the modelling and phasing of additional resource and when we need it, what was originally planned as an increase of 15% in February 23, we can now stagger to 7.5% in February and 6.5% following in August. That will be focused primarily on delivery, getting the order done. So that increased pace of delivery, the increased output with a focus on the informatics technology and engagement teams, which essentially do all the legwork. They convert the data that comes into us to the information on the website and the portal. So that's going to be the main focus. And I guess a sort of important point to make is, PHIN only has its reserves to live off in a sort of adverse scenario. We have a governance target of 6 months cover normally. We're continuing to relax that to 5 months, which will save the sector about 450k in the next budget year. So we'll be maintaining that for the short, medium term over this process. So hopefully in that pack we answer many of your questions, but again, we have a Q&A session, so if there are any more, happy to take them then. Okay, a few other areas to mop up from the consultation. So a consistent perspective on patient involvement, clear view and support that patients should be involved in the information that we publish and develop. We do this already, so actually making sure we do this efficiently going forward is going to be quite key. So we welcome your support on that. But also there was the feedback that don't let this distract you from getting the order done. And we heard that loud and clear. Now, the main complaint from patients who use our website is blank profiles and half-empty pages. So actually, by getting the order done, we're going to make the product better, be listening to patients. So actually, our focus being the order just helps that, completely. Adapt. So as you may know, we are currently going through 3 pilots with the NHS and the Adapt programme. They should be completed by sort of Q3 this year. After that, we will need to do a bit of a wrap-up, work out how they've gone, do a debrief, but then actually what does the Adapt programme look like off the back of that? So what's the roadmap for that? How long is it going to take? What are the milestones within that? Who needs to be involved? It's probably quite a big bit of work over the back end of this year and the start of next year to work out what that programme looks like. But we will all be invited to participate in that because the collective engagement in that process and eventual delivery is going to be pretty critical. Fees and packages, I would say sort of a mixed view within this from the consultation. Clearly, focus on the order, which means consultant fees through Article 22. However, there was sort of I think mixed opinions on sort of self-pay hospital fees. So we've decided to park that until the court order has been delivered. And we would only reconsider that with member support later down the line. Now, there was a sort of spectrum of opinions on that one. And this has sort of been the landing spot we've been in. I know that, sort of not everyone will be happy with that. But at the same time, given the volume of work you've seen that there's still to do on the previous slides, I think that's probably the most sensible approach we've got at the moment. In terms of ongoing work and next steps, so as I mentioned, there's the task and finish groups. So they're working on the detailed policy positions for all the Article 21 measures. That will be completed by the end of the year. We've also started some of the early thinking around the work streams on presumed publication and proms and invited various stakeholders into those early thinking workshops. And then I guess there's a bigger question mark about how we monitor this going forward. So what does the programme governance look like? How do we manage the risks? How do we make sure we're on track? Which forums are needed to do that? Who wants to be on those? How often should they meet? And what does the CMA also want from us? And how do they want to be involved? So these are questions we've thought about through the partnership forum. Maybe that morphs into something else. But similarly, I think we just need to think about a bit more of that going forward over the next few months in particular as we move into the delivery phase. So that's all we really wanted to say today. So really just sort of, a lot has been achieved over the past 6 months, but clearly there's an awful lot still to do. But we really welcome the engagement and momentum that there has been. And I think, long may that continue. So now I'm going to hand over to Cliff Bucknell at HCA, who's just going to say a few words as a long-standing member of the Partnership Forum. So,
Thank you.
Thanks, Cliff.
So I've been asked to try and give some feedback as to how the Partnership Forum has worked and how it's gone. Well, a lot's happened during this last year, and rather than focus on the difficult times of the past, I'd like to draw your attention to the new era of PHIN, which I think you can see displayed very neatly here, all in a row. So since February, we've reconvened the Partnership Forum meetings. They did exist before, but they had a slightly different flavour, shall we say? And these have now been most constructive. The focus has been on how to deliver the CMA order. Collaboration linked with transparency has been the key to unlock this process. With Jack as an excellent interim CEO under Jane's leadership and the rest of us on the Partnership Forum, we've worked together. And it's quite interesting because on the previous slide, I'm not going to ask you to go back to it because it's quite interesting. One of the things in this whole Partnership Forum was the mantra of we're all in this together because after all, we are all in this together. And it was fascinating to see that you couldn't help yourself. It was still on there on the slide at the bottom there. So that was really good. So the CMA has renewed the focus on delivery. And despite clearly emphasizing the urgency, and there's no doubt that that has been the case, they have been very pragmatic on implementation. And this is most welcome. The order provided remedies, and those remedies are to address the adverse consequences of competition. This requires us all to collaborate and participate. Now, we have to recognize that some providers and some consultants have been further ahead than others on this. However, the approach has been taken by everybody involved has been that of involvement, discussion, and encouragement rather than encouraging any conflict or any other approach. So that has again been one of the key ways of achieving success. It's provided the opportunity for robust debate and challenge, and this has been openly encouraged by our PHIN colleagues, and this has led to consensus on the way forward. The PHIN resourcing, which you've just been looking at, has been a key point of contention, I may say, for the Partnership Forum, and its associated task and finish groups. So suffice to say, the plan needs to be resourced to deliver the order. However frustrating that may be, and indeed it is frustrating to all of us that it needs resourcing, the fact is it's got to be resourced because otherwise it's not going to work. And we do have a fixed time interval within which it has to work. So if we're to keep the cost increases to a minimum, there is a further requirement upon us all as providers and consultants. We have to try to work together to find novel ways to enter data accurately and in a timely manner. And these are things that are actually quite tricky to achieve, but I think that working together we can do it. This does, however, require more work. I would suggest, therefore, that the process has momentum, but it does need broad provider and consultant engagement to be successful. And I suggest, therefore, that if we're to deliver the CMA order in the time required, then the current level of transparency and collaboration needs to continue. So I hope that that gives you some sort of insight and feedback as to what it's been like in the Partnership Forum. Overall, however, at the end of each of the sessions, we have generally had a sort of, at the very least, a flat, if not a smile on our faces, which is a very positive thing that this team has brought. So thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. Much appreciated. I think this is probably an appropriate time to ask Susanna Meek from the CMA. Susanna, if you were able to give us a few words, a bit of a readout from the board meeting yesterday, that'd be helpful.
Thank you, I think. Okay, so I just wanted to give a readout from yesterday's CMA board meeting. The board met to discuss and review the roadmap, and after a full and frank debate, it is very much supportive of this roadmap. It's very keen to see it delivered, and delivered, as mentioned, as urgently as is possible. I'd like to just raise a few of the other points that came out of that discussion. I think the first thing to say is that the CMA is very appreciative of the complexity of this remedy, the difficulty, the challenge that we've set the industry, and it appreciates the hard work and the commitment that's gone into putting together the roadmap and trying to take this forward. Now, I guess from our perspective, however, the proof is in the delivery, and the CMA is concerned about the delays that have occurred to date, the fact that the order hasn't been delivered so far. It's a lot of what the original plan was. And so, as an organisation, we're very focused on remaining engaged with the industry, monitoring progress and compliance with the roadmap that has now been set out, and we hope we agree today. And we will remain on the ball in terms of enforcement as well. And as PHIN certainly will be aware, if people in the room will be aware, we have recently started enforcement action, in that case against some consultants who just weren't engaging with remedy obligations under that remedy. And so I think just the final point that I would probably make, and it's actually a very hearty that has come up a few times already in the discussion, is we recognise that there are some difficult conceptual things that need to be worked through to work out what measures should be and how they should be implemented to make sure that those are useful and productive for consumers. But the board is also very focused actually on the basic quality, completeness of the data that is submitted, because as I think it was Jack highlighted, one of the key bits of feedback is a frustration is half empty pages with complete information. And that's certainly something we focus for the CMA, making sure that everyone is participating, collecting, submitting the basic data, whilst working through getting to the more complex aspects of the remedy and finding something that works and is useful for customers. So I think that was all I wanted to say. I'm also very happy to take questions.
Okay.
So we're going on for Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Susanna. I'm sure we will come back to some of these things. And we've now got about 45 minutes for some questions and discussion.